G'day, my name's Lloyd Grolleman. I'm the Aussie pastor. I want to welcome you to our program tonight. It is a very special one because I got a very special visitor, a friend of mine, all the way from the United States of America. His name is Pastor John Lomacang. Pastor, welcome.
Good to be here, Lloyd.
With your blue hand and all, we're glad to have you here.
Yes. I discovered my index finger is not as strong as I hoped it was, and so I got a little American cast on the bottom and an Aussie covering on the top.
Oh, the Aussie one must be the blue one.
Exactly.
Now, the reason I've invited him here, well, for two reasons. First time I saw you was 30 years ago.
Wow.
You were singing for the Heritage Singers, a very famous Adventist music group. Were you singing bass or?
Oh, no, I was doing tenor.
I knew you were singing tenor. And they came out to Australia and I was mesmerised by these incredible singers. So you sing.
That's right.
But he's also got this most amazing story. It's a testimony. I haven't heard too many testimonies like this. I heard it just the first time the other day, and I've invited him to our studio to share this story. So I just want to welcome you one more time, and we are looking forward to this.
Thank you. So good to be here, and I'm excited to tell the story. You know, it's amazing how life begins with a tragedy and end up as a triumph. I was one of those that had that unique experience. My mom would take me to a babysitter every day before she'd go to work. My mom and dad were not married. She met my dad in New York City, and they met long enough just to give me life. And after that, on a daily basis, my mom would take me to a babysitter. And at the end of the day, when work was done, she'd come and pick me up. And for whatever reason, one day she just decided that this was the day that she was going to leave her son and also my sister, who was 3 years old. I was 3 months old, my sister was 3 years old. She decided on this particular day that she was going to just leave us at the babysitter's and never come back. And, you know, life beginning as a tragedy was the way my life started. I didn't really understand because I was too young. I was in the home of people that could have easily decided to just go ahead and give me to the state or to the city to raise, but the Lord, I believe, chose this home. You see a picture of the house that I was raised in here. The Lord chose this home to be the place where my life would begin. And right there in New York City, on Madison Street in Brooklyn, became the place where my tragedy was about to be developed into a triumph that will take many, many years. The Lord chose a family for me. A couple from Trinidad and Barbados, Mama Haynes, the lady you're seeing to the bottom left of your screen, and her husband to the top right, Mr. George Haynes from Barbados. They became my parents immediately before I even knew that my mom and dad had left. The Lord put me in the care of these two individuals, and particularly in the care of Mama Haynes. She became the angel in my life. You see a picture of her right here. This was the woman that God chose to begin to develop my mind and my life, to begin to take this abandoned child and remind him that he was really not alone. And Mama was the kind of woman that would take my sister and me to church every Sabbath. Every weekend she would take us to church. She'd get there very early in the morning, and we'd stay all day long. We'd have lunch after the sermon was done and go out to the community and come back and stay almost till the church was closed. And that was the kind of life that I had from week to week in the care of someone that I didn't even know was my natural parents. I didn't even know that they were not my natural parents. But Mama was the one that introduced me to Jesus. And I say that because, you know, sometimes we could be in situations where we are an inconvenience, but I never sensed that. When the Sabbath was coming in on Friday evening, Mama would sit down at the piano and play songs like Sweet Hour of Prayer, and the sun was setting in the east, and we would sing songs like Day is Dying in the West. And that was where I met Jesus. That was where my love, not only for the Lord, was born, but I understood that that's where the affection that I missed from my mom was now being inserted into my life. And Mama was an amazing woman. She guided me all through my life, all the joys, all the celebratory moments, the gifts, the holidays, the birthdays, all those things that I would have missed with my mom, my natural mother. The Lord gave me immediately. But my life took a a pretty tragic turn. About 12 years old, Mama Haynes took in sick. And I never forgot that, because she had a diseased kidney. And medical science was not what it is now by a long stretch. So she went to the hospital, and I'm just speculating here, maybe dialysis, I don't know, but whatever happened, one day we got a phone call from the hospital that she had taken a turn for the worst. And I was too young to go to the hospital. I was too young, I couldn't go. So her husband, Mr. Haynes, and my sister, Vivian, they went to the hospital, and I stayed home in the backyard and just played basketball against the back wall of the house. And a couple of hours passed by, and I never forget the look on my sister's face when they finally came back. She walked into the backyard with tears in her eyes, and I almost knew before she said it what had happened. But she said something that has impacted my life to this very day. She said, "Mama passed away." And I felt like my world had just dropped out on that statement. Mama passed away. But she didn't stop. She said, "But she told me not to forget to tell you that she prayed for you." And the very next year, 13 years old, because I lost my spiritual anchor in church, because I lost my spiritual anchor in Christ. Before I had my own relationship, Mama Haynes was my relationship with Christ. She was my anchor. And because I lost her, I left the church. I went out into the world, just gradually getting involved in the life of New York City. I got involved in partying. My sister introduced me to the party world, clubs, discotheques as they called them back in the 70s. And I got involved in disc jockeying. I was in clubs that I shouldn't be. I was too young to be in. I got involved in the nightlife, eventually gambling, pool hustling, more specifically gambling on the pool table, or billiards you might call it here. And got involved in gang violence. I never joined a gang, but I got held up at gunpoint more than once. I could have easily lost my life at any point along the way. Almost got run over by a car on a Friday evening when I should not have been in a club, but I was drinking, walking across the highway, and all I could hear was my friend yell my name, and I could feel the car brush my coattail. I could have lost my life then, but I wondered, through all of those almost tragedies, what was the difference? Well, when the time came many years later after I was married and I was working on a CD entitled Never Alone, my wife challenged me one day, and she says, instead of using someone else's songs, what about Mama Haynes can you remember? Do a song about her. And I said, honey, I don't write songs. But she said, the Lord will give it to you. And what do you remember about Mama Haynes? And I said, Mama Haynes really had an active prayer life. She really prayed. And then it came back to me that years ago, my sister told me that Mama prayed for me. So this song was inspired that I want to share with you right now. It's called Mama's Prayer. And there may be a mother or somebody who's in the role of a mother, or somebody who's raising a child that doesn't belong to them. And I want to encourage you, because Mama passed away, never knew I left the church, and I'm back now. And I believe the reason why I made it is because of Mama's prayer.
With the sun going down, she'd motion to us, come and kneel with me. Let's talk to our Heavenly Father. In Him we find victory. Through inquisitive eyes I would glance at her lips as she prayed from her heart of love. Then I knew in my heart there is someone keeping watch from above. Thank you for the day we knelt to pray. I believe it's how it worked out. Back then I couldn't imagine what life was all about. You showed me you cared, you always were there to lead me in the way. But I know that where I am today is 'cause you taught me how to pray. I remember the day Mama passed away, I was playing out in the yard. With tears in her eyes, my sister said the journey back home was hard. Before Mama closed her eyes and rest, I heard her tenderly say, remember to tell your brother that I remembered to pray. So thank you for the day we knelt to pray. I believe that's how it worked out. Back then I couldn't imagine what life was all about. You showed me you cared, you always were there to lead me in the way. For I know that where I am today is 'cause you taught me how to pray. As the years roll on, my mama's prayers are answered once again. For I know that where I am today is not where I've always been. Thank you for the day we knelt to pray. I believe that's how it worked out. Back then I couldn't imagine what this life was all about. You showed me you cared, you always were there to lead me in the way. For I know that where I am today is 'cause you taught me how to pray. So thank you for the day we knelt to pray. I believe that's how it worked out. Back then I couldn't imagine what this life was all about. You showed me you cared, you always were there to lead me in the way. For I know that where I am today is 'cause you taught me how to pray. Yes, the difference in where I am today is 'cause you taught me how to pray. Yes, the difference in where I am today, it's because you taught me how to pray.
I look back now on that prayer that Mama prayed for me before she passed away, and I realize I wouldn't be where I am today had it not been for that prayer. I continued in my worldly journey, and about 3 or 4 years after I walked away from the Lord, I met a young lady named Angela. Here's a picture of us together. Obviously, years later, I was still that guy that was in church on Sabbath morning whenever I was awake to get there. I partied sometimes from Thursday to Sunday, and there was really no structure in my life. I just knew that, going to church felt good. I was in the building, but I wasn't in the Lord. And when I met Angie, my life began to take a different turn. She was the youngest of 8 children, couldn't have boyfriends. We met at 16 years old. I remember that meeting in church one Saturday evening, and a good friend of ours, a mutual friend, said, "There's a young girl wants to meet you." And I said, "Well, who is that?" And he pointed out to me who it was, and I couldn't believe it, because this same young lady I had been watching for years. And I thought, wow, there's no way she'd even give me the time of day. But the Lord had bigger plans for our lives, and we got to know each other, and she would invite me over to a house for family worship, and I met her mom, her brothers, and as the years went by, we began to grow together spiritually. We began to develop in our walk with Christ. And I know as I look back now, there's no way that I could be where I am today had the Lord not brought her into my life. And I thought about that because there was this gap between my time in the world, leaving the church, meeting Angie, and then at 19 years old, after coming out of this long disc jockey life, I remember one Friday evening, just to add this point to the story that's so important. She would invite me over for family worship, but this one Friday evening, I remember very well, after family worship was over, I was nervous to even be there, but this one Friday evening, she said, "John, have you ever heard about the book, The Great Controversy?" And I said, "I have." And I think when Mama was alive, I heard about it. She said, "Let's read it together." And would you know it, the very first chapter in the book that I had a chance to read was the chapter called The Time of Trouble. Now, if ever there was a chapter that would really shock a young boy that was living for the world, would be The Time of Trouble. And then I read about the promises of Christ's return. And that Friday evening, the Lord broke through my heart. I was working at Bank of America at the time, and I would go to work with a billiard cue, a pool stick, as it were, and a boom box, a big radio. And that was Friday. And then on Monday, I went back to work with a Bible and the book, The Great Controversy, the very book that God had opened my heart back up to Him. And my journey, I tell you, from that point on, it took off. A few years went by. We dated off and on for 9 years. It's kind of a funny story. Until one day, just about 24, kind of fast forwarding, about 24, edging up there, one of her brothers one day walked up to me and he said, "How long are you going to date my sister?" And I said, "Well, I don't know." He says, "Are you going to date her forever, or are you going to marry her? What?" And I looked in his eyes and I realized he was really serious. And he says, "Are you going to marry my sister or what?" And I said, "Yes." He said, "When?" I said, "Next month." And we got married 30 days later. And our lives really, really took off. The Lord broke me away from the music of the city, broke me away from that lifestyle. I got rid of all my records, my albums. I stopped partying. My love for the Lord began to grow, and the Lord sent two special ladies in my life, Mama Haynes to introduce me to Jesus, and my wife, Angela, to get me back to Christ. And so I think about it, and I look at that whole picture of the life in New York, and this next song I want to sing for you kind of encapsulates that, because even though I didn't know my natural mother, the Lord gave me another mother. Even though I had no personal relationship with Jesus, He gave me another woman in my life, my wife, Angie, who reminded me that through all my wanderings, I was never alone.
Walking in my own parade, hiding behind my own charade, forgetting you were there. A prodigal staying on the run, searching for things that I call fun, ignoring your small voice. But your love has no ending, and your grace knows no bound. For in patience you waited still, until my road was heaven bound. You said you'd never leave me nor forsake me, but how long will it take me When my wandering is through, will I be running home to you? I know your love will pursue me, but what will it take to lead me where I'm never alone? Just like a beacon in a storm, your loving arms kept me warm when feelings let me down. When everyone turned and walked away, when I couldn't even pray, I remember that it was true, that your love has no ending, and your grace knows no bound. Oh no, no. For in patience you waited still until my road was heaven bound. You said you'd never leave me nor forsake me, but how long will it take me when my wandering was through, coming home to you? I know your love will pursue me, but what will it take to lead me where I'm never alone? No, where I'm never alone. You said you'd never leave me nor forsake me, but how long will it take me when my wandering was through? Will I be coming home to you? I know your love will pursue me, but what will it take to lead me where I'm never alone? Where I'm never alone. Now I'm
And I've learned that the reason why my life is moving in the direction that it is because really I'm never alone. My wife and I, after we got married, moved from New York City to Orlando, Florida. We moved into a little small room that I lived in all my life. For about 3 months, we lived in that room after we got married. And then one day we decided it's time to leave. And that was a very eventful day because I never forgot the look on Papa's face, the man that raised me. The first time I saw him shed tears, and I knew that he really loved me. And we prayed together. Then we got in the vehicle. We had a van and a car, and my wife's cousin had our stuff, everything we owned in that van and in my station wagon. And we began our journey to Orlando, Florida. And something amazing was going to happen in Orlando. The Lord always gave me previews of my life, and as you heard Pastor Lloyd talk about, I was a part of a singing group called the Heritage Singers. When I gave up all my albums in New York City, I then moved down to Orlando, Florida. And while I was there, my wife and I moved into a sunroom that her aunt had built, and it became the starting point of our lives, never knowing where we were going, whether going to the east or going to the west. And I never forgot one evening as I had a concert, the Heritage Singers made an appeal at the end of their concert. I did my concert, then I drove over to their concert as my mother-in-law insisted. And I auditioned that night for their group to join the Heritage Singers. And never knowing what God had in store. But about 7 or 8 months later, I got a phone call from them. They invited me to join their singing group. But something amazing was about to happen. The Lord was about to make another connection in my life before we left Orlando and decided to take our journey around the world singing with the Heritage Singers. I'm going to share that in the next part of this story, how God was about to break my life open and then connect it back in a way that was amazing. He was about to bring me to the place where my life began through another amazing miracle. And I'll tell you about that in the second part of this amazing story.
Well, I really enjoyed that testimony. It was powerful. I'll tell you what, it's a wonderful thing, Pastor John, when God comes into your life and rescues you.
That's right.
And he rescued you.
That's right. And even though I was abandoned, the Lord said, I will never leave you or forsake you.
And
that's the good news.
He never left you, did he?
No, he didn't.
Now, you are into music, I know that. We've just listened to some beautiful songs. This particular CD is about the story you've just told us.
That's right. That's why it's called Never Alone. And 7 of the songs on there are related to the story that I'm sharing today. And when people listen to the story, as they are, they'll understand the inspiration behind the music.
Now, if I wanted to listen to more of your music, can I get it somewhere? Or?
Yeah, you can go to my website, johnlomacang.com. That's John Lomacang, John, JOHNLOMACANG.com. And you could listen to them and also purchase them from there.
Okay. Well, look, I really enjoyed that today, and I'm talking to you from my heart. And I want to welcome you back next time. Because next time, we've never done this before, you know. We're having you for 2 weeks in a row on our program.
I appreciate it deeply.
Because there's a second part to this story.
That's right.
And when I heard the second part to this story, I got to tell you, it moved me as much as the first part. Because it's a story about how you met your mum, your real life blood mum.
That's right.
And what happened.
That's right. Only the Lord could have done it.
Yeah. So I want to invite you back next time. Come and listen to this powerful testimony. My name's Lloyd Grolleman. I am the Aussie pastor, and I love you. I love you a whole heap. But you know what? God loves you a whole lot more. See you next time.
Never alone. You said you'd never leave me nor forsake me.